All right, this is the walkthrough for Lab 4 on guitars. In this lab, you're going to be creating a static mix based on a short guitar improvisation by guitarist Anthony Pirog. It's going to be kind of abstract, it's kind of droney, so this won't be just a really straightforward kind of guitar recording, but some of you might find it really creative and kind of interesting. Before we can go and create a static mix of it, we first need to identify the different microphone approaches and techniques that were used, which is part of this lab, is just to learn more about different kind of more advanced guitar miking and amping techniques. But also we're going to decide which mics we like for what different parts of the song. I think there's about 8 parts and 8 different techniques for each part. So yeah, we're going to review, or as it says here, not 8, but 6 different microphone techniques for recording guitar. We're going to look at, there's several takes here. And we're going to create a microphone technique selection description. In other words, you're going to describe why you picked certain mics for certain parts. We're going to create, as I mentioned before, a static mix. We'll create something called a soundstage diagram. We may have done this before in a previous class, but if not, this is just as good a time as any to introduce you to the idea of creating a sort of visual representation of where you're going to place things in a mix, both volume-wise and both from a volume perspective and a panning perspective. We'll also do something which is not really fun, but it's super helpful. That's to archive a session where you actually go and save it in a way that's going to make it a lot smaller. I think this file right now is about 3 gigs, so it will take a while to download, and then sharing it and moving around is just going to be really difficult. So one of the things we can do is to go ahead and save it or archive it and then clear any of the unused clips. This gives us a little less flexibility, but it allows us to transfer and move a session around. So I find myself doing this quite a bit. So just as a reminder for this lab, you're going to be turning in one zipped compressed folder that's going to have that archived smaller Pro Tools session in it. An audio files folder, as always, a soundstage diagram or just a picture of it, and a microphone technique selection description. So you're just going to do a short write-up about which microphone technique you used for which part. As always, you get 5 points, a little bit different actually. In this lab, you're getting 5 points for students creating a mix vision or what I described as a soundstage diagram. You're going to get 5 points for actually creating the static mix using trims and panners. You'll get 5 points for identifying different microphone techniques and may hide and make inactive the alternate takes that you don't want. And then also complete all the documentation, which will include the write-up about the different microphone techniques you selected. So that's the 20 points for this lab. Let's get into the lab. There's a few key shortcut keys. A screenshot is one. So if you don't know how to do a screenshot on a Mac, it's Command-Shift-3. I think there's an actual button on most PCs to go ahead and just do a screen grab. We are going to look at the time operations window later on when we talk about archiving. And then, of course, we'll talk about track groups and then just, selecting all tracks versus adding an insert simultaneously to multiple tracks, which is always something that is a great shortcut key that sometimes we learned previously, but it's often forgotten, and it's super helpful, especially like when you're trying to apply trim to every track simultaneously. So if you haven't already, if you're like watching this video, and you're going to watch the video first before you do the lab, I would start downloading this year, month, date, year name lab 4 file. It is about 3 gigs, like I said. So if you're on that slower internet, it may take a while. I, of course, have already pre-downloaded the session, opened it up and set it up so that we could do this walkthrough here. So anyways, with that all downloaded, go ahead and open it up. And the first thing we're going to do is just take a listen to it. So here we go. You notice it's probably one of the largest sessions we've worked with so far in any previous lab. I don't know what the best way to view it is. I have it here in the edit window. I do have it in narrow mix view. If I do Command M or Command Option M, I can make it large or wide view in the mix window, but probably just regular view, Command Option M is probably better just so you can kind of see everything. It might be more effective to actually just work in the edit window. The only thing about the edit window is there's quite a few tracks. So you can see there's 2, 4, 6, 8 different microphone techniques for each of the different parts. So there's something called drone A, drone B, drone C, drone D. It looks like a squeak in the room, a slide part, and then a lead, and then something else called speedy lead. So there's about 8 different parts and 8 different techniques for 8 different parts. So a real quick way to just familiarize yourself with each part is just go through and solo them. And if you notice right now on the bottom left-hand side here, they're all in these groups. So if the group name is highlighted, then that group is active. So if I just like solo drone 1 here, let's take a listen to that. This is just like one, solo drone part. The drone B is pretty similar. It's just like a little bit higher, a little different note. Let's see, drone C. Yeah, it's just higher, a little bit different. Let's see, let's do drone D. Yeah, drone D is really nice. It kind of has this nice rhythm to it. And then here's the squeak room. Yeah, this one we're probably going to turn way down, but that's kind of a weird one. It kind of just adds some ambiance in the back there. The slide lead is really beautiful. So that's really nice. And then there's like a reverse lead. Which is really nice as well, but it's just sort of the same sort of guitar part, but in reverse. We're using a reverse pedal. And then I think, what's this? Yeah, this one is like just kind of a really fast sort of skittering of the sound. So this is probably going to be a background sound as well. So you have these different guitar parts. If you're kind of confused as to like what the heck is going on right now, like why are there all these guitar parts? Well, and how were they created? Who's creating this? Who's responsible for this? The session does go through in detail, not only where it was recorded in Studio A in DC back in 2010, so a while ago. The recording was of an artist called Anthony Pirog. Anthony does kind of like experimental guitars. You can see him here on the right-hand side. He actually was in the control room of the studio, and he just had his guitars and all his pedals just sitting on the floor in the studio, and was just kind of performing in there. And so what we did is we sent via tie lines, we sent the guitars out to the studio. So you can see here's some of the other miking. These pictures are old, so they're not that great, but you can see we were using 2 amps, we were using a head. We were using actually this Neumann K100, which is a binaural recording head. The 2 ears here are basically microphones, so it has like 2 microphones with this head material in the inside. It's supposed to kind of mimic how we as people hear. So that kind of creates an interesting sound. There's both some mics that we put in a nearby vocal booth using a Neumann TLM 170. We also had an amp out in a separate hallway or like airlock in between the control room and the tracking room. And that was an RE20 we used on this large sort of half stack. And they also used this Yamaha sub-kick mic here. You can see that that's actually usually used on kick drums to kind of capture sort of the low end of the kick drum, but we used it to get some of that nice low end. And here's a picture of me in a very, very like 2008, 2010 shirt here. That was very cool to wear like corduroys and a shirt like that. And that's when I had some hair on the top of my head. Okay, so what we want to do is review all 8 of the guitar parts and then select the different miking techniques. So you're probably going to want to do a lot of listening. at first. So the best way to probably do that is to listen to each part individually. And then what you can do is, like if I want to listen to the room mic versus something else, let's do it with like the lead part, because I think the slide part here is probably the most sort of straightforward. So by the way, I'm option clicking to select them all or option clicking to deselect them. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn the group off on the slide lead. That way I can listen to just the room mic here. Let me make all of these. I'm going to a shift click and then option shift to drag them all, make them a little bit larger so we can kind of read the names. So here's the slide lead, room 1. Here's room 2. Not too different, but you're getting a little bit of that, you know, just sort of a little bit more brightness. Here is the Roger. We called the Neumann binaural head Roger, but yeah, I would say with the binaural head here. Let me go to Command Option M to make the mix window larger so I can read the names. But yeah, Roger left and right. I would actually go ahead and pan Roger left and right if you're going to use them, and I would not just solo the left or the right individually. I would solo them both together. So a really cool kind of sound. If you can hear it in your headphones, if you got headphones on now, it sounds a little bit spread out. It sounds a little bit different. Here is the, let's see, this is a 170 Millennia. This is from the booth. So let's listen to that one. Gives us a little bit more of the room. Here's one, let's see, this is out in the hall. So a little bit different character. And then here is the, this is the sub kick mic, and this is on out in the hall as well. So if you kind of pair that with maybe one of the like closer room mics, you get actually kind of a nice mix. And then, of course, there's also the DI, which is just the direct output of the electric guitar. I think this DI, though, we did it from the head, so you are getting the sound of the amplifier's head, but not just the clean sound coming out of the guitar. Yeah, so there'd be no ambiance with that. So one of the pairings I like to do is actually mix Roger with the DI in the center, and it creates kind of an interesting pairing. Here's without Roger. So it's just a plain right from the amp head plus. So that's kind of nice. By the way, if you're just wondering about the DI, it's not a true DI where it's just coming directly from the guitar into the input. Instead, excuse me, we're coming out of this head, just this other Marshall head we had. We're coming out into the DI box and then into the guitar. So, let's see. So what I would do is go through and, like I said, ungroup the ones, find out which ones you want. So I think for maybe the lead, I'm going to get rid of, let's see, I'll select the ones I don't want here. So by the way, if I want to deselect ones, I can command click. So if I select them all here, I'll hold down shift and it'll select all of those. And then the ones I don't want this one, this one, this one, or these two. Well, actually, I should do it the other way around. Sorry. I don't want this selected, don't want that selected, because now the ones with selected, if I do Option Shift and right click, I'm going to hide and make those inactive. So now for the lead part, I only have 3 tracks. So part of the lab, which might be a little tedious or it might be kind of fun because you can be really creative, is to go through all the different groups and decide which ones you want to keep. and which ones you want to get rid of. So I'll just real quickly just hide and make some inactive here. And I guess I could use the DI, but I'll use these lead mics. I really like these for the drones. Yeah, I'll leave for this other drone here. I'll leave Roger. I think he was pretty good. So like I said, track names become really important when you're working with this many tracks in a session, because you really have to kind of stay organized in order not to be able to read what's going on here. Sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once, and my brain doesn't really work like that. Great. So, and then with the reverse lead, I think I'm just going to do just Roger. So let me get rid of these other ones. So by the way, I would be like going through and listening to these. I've just done this so many times. I know what I kind of like on each one. I think for this speedy lead, I like to use these two that are out in the hall. Okay, so now if you think about it, I've narrowed it down to just some basic mics. If you're using any Rogers, I would go ahead. Let's see, I have a Roger here, it looks like, and it looks like I have, is there a Roger anywhere else? Slide, yeah, it looks like I'm using a Roger. If you have any other Rogers, I would just pan the left and the right, hard left and right, to get that to sound right. So now if we just have these tracks in the session, let's take a listen. So pretty cool. You can see like that speedy lead and maybe the squeaks need to be a lot quieter, but that's something we'll decide in our soundstage. So by the way, while we were listening back there, did you notice I deselected all the groups here? Because now we definitely don't want the groups on, because those other tracks, we don't want to be like soloing or activating them when we're trying to work with these tracks. So the next part of the lab is after you've decided on those takes that you want, is to go ahead and hide the ones that you don't want, which we just did. Next, we're going to start doing a static mix. So I think one of the things you can probably just like visually see right off the bat is that these are all not the same level. Like this squeaky booth one is actually really loud, where some of these others are relatively low in volume. So I'm going to actually use my squeaky booth one as sort of the benchmark, and I'm going to go ahead with the clip gain on each track and just sort of raise the level of all the other tracks to get them to be all about the same volume. And you should probably not do this as sort of recklessly as I am. I would go in and really make sure that they're all sort of a similar volume, at least visually. But you should also listen to. Just be careful too, where like you can make this a pretty healthy level, but you see then how it's like clipping here. So you probably just want to not boost it that much. This one you'll probably just have to lower a little bit because it does get so loud. I'll try to do that with this other part here. Let's see, the hall looks pretty good. I'll make it a little bit louder, and then same thing with that. So just be careful not to boost anything too much. You'll be bringing up quite a bit of noise. But now if you can just kind of visually see, it looks like these are all about the same level. So that's going to make then this next part of creating a soundstage a lot easier. Because what we can start to do is figure out what the most important instruments are and then just use trims on each track. And the trims that we're going to use, we're going to take the thing that we think is the most important thing and put that at -3, and then just every other thing that's less important than that, we're going to put at 6, 9, and 12. The reason we're doing that, by the way, if I play this back now, let's look at our master fader. I think it's going to be pretty bad. Yeah, you can see we're just clipping the stereo bus. So we do need to turn things down. So we turned everything up to kind of make it even, and now we're going to use trim to turn everything down. So just real quick, I'll select all these tracks. I'm holding shift to select just them, and then I'll do option shift, and then let's see if I can do this with control. I can't, but let me scroll into insert A here, holding option shift, Click on it, I'll go to plugin, and I'm going to go to other, and I believe it's all the way at the bottom. There it is, trim. So if we scroll back up, if you haven't thrown up yet, you can see now there's a trim track or a trim insert on every track. So I think the soundstage diagram that I drew, it's pretty crude, but if you can kind of see here, volume has to do with distance. This thing here, this is supposed to be the listener with big ears here. So the idea is the things that are closer to the listener are going to be louder in volume, or basically are like this lead part here, the slide lead. I said that's probably closest, or I want that closest to the listener. So that's going to be at -3. Probably these other guitars will also be at -3, but then some of these other guitar parts are going to be further back. Notice how some are more on the left and some are more on the right. So that's where panning is going to come in. So you can go through and create a static mix by not only adjusting all these trims. So by the way, like I said, I wanted my slide lead to be the loudest thing. So I'm going to go into these trims and put these at -3. And by the way, I can option drag to just copy the settings over to the next one. See how this is not. So if I drag this over, it's now -3. So probably I'll have that be the loudest thing. Maybe the reverse lead, I'll put it -6. So I'm just typing in -6 here. I'll do that for this one as well. So yeah, pretty straightforward. And then probably our squeaks and our speedy stuff, like maybe we'll put those at -12 because we don't want those loud at all. By the way, once I write one in, I'm just option dragging it. Let's turn squeak in the booth here down. And let's leave our drones where they are. Let's just listen real quick how this sounds. By the way, with the speedy leads, I'm going to pan them hard right, and I'm going to put my squeaks left. Let's hear how this sounds. Yeah, I might want to turn these drones down a little bit, like at least put them at like -9. I'll do that for all of them and just option dragging to turn them all down to -9. Great. So that's sort of coming together. So when you're happy with that and you've created your static mix by creating some pannings and some trims, the only other part of the lab is to go ahead and archive the session. And like I said, I don't think this is like an extremely exhilarating part of the lab, but it just goes through how you should actually go ahead and save the session. So the first things I would do is go ahead and save a copy in. So just to go through how to do that, you would go to File, Save Copy In, and what you'd want to do is in this Save Copy In window, make sure you select all the audio files and export it. When you do that, like save it somewhere else. Don't save it as a save copy of. Save it somewhere else with your year, month, date, your name, Lab 4. Save it that way if you haven't been saving already. And then go and don't do what I'm about to do. I'm just going to continue working in this one. Don't do that. Go ahead and close just this session and go ahead and then open the copy and continue archiving it from the copy. This way you'll have the original Lab 4 guitar that if you ever want to use this and go back to the other takes, they'll be there. The save copy in that we're about to work from is going to be the archive version, which is going to be smaller. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'll pretend, let me just like resave this so you know this is the copy, even though it's not, but I'll save it as year, month, date. So year, month, date, let's see, my name, Doug B, Lab 4, and I'll just put copy at the end. Don't put copy at the end of yours, but I'm working from the saved copy in that I made. Great. So we'll do that. Awesome. So with that saved copy version, then I'm going to go ahead and do the next step, which part of the archiving process is just sort of setting up the session. So the first thing we did here was do the save copy in. The next thing we're going to do is delete any unused tracks. I don't think we have any here. Anything that it's hidden, we don't need anymore. So you could delete all the ones that we're not using. I might not suggest doing that. You can update all the names for tracks and clips if need be. You can also ensure that all of the audio tracks have crossfades set up correctly. That doesn't really apply to this. And we're not going to consolidate any tracks. We can put 8 bars of silence at the start of the session. So if you're going to do that, just make sure that you are in bars and beats. Right now, the session is in minutes and seconds. So I'm going to go ahead up here to show bars and beats and then make that my main counter here. And if I do that and move my cursor to the start, I can do command numeric or option numeric 1. I'm sorry. And that opens the time operations window. And we'll go to insert time, and we're just going to put 8 bars at the start. This is just going to be helpful moving forward. That way, depending on what version of the DAW, like if somebody opens this up years from now, having that space at the start can be helpful. So let's see, anything else when we're backing it up? Let's see, we put some blank bars at the start. We can go into, if we're going to consolidate anything or commit anything, which we could, meaning if we put any plugins on any of these tracks, we could go and commit them, like these trim settings, we could go and do that. The way to commit the track, we can get to that in a second, but if we go to File or Pro Tools Settings, we can go into Processing and then just make sure the under the Processing tab, the commit is at 32-bit. If we do that now, if we commit any tracks, which means we'll basically essentially process them, render them with whatever whatever plugins we have on. So if we have trim or we put some EQ or you mess around and put some compression on it, any other inserts, it'll actually just print them. And the cool part about that is that way if you open the session up like years from now and you don't have the same plugins or have the same access to them, the files will sound the way it did when you last were working on them. So sometimes then you just need to make some minor tweaks and you can go from there. So after you've done all that, it says also to disable any sends on the master fader. We don't really have that. Unfreeze any tracks if they've been frozen. It also mentions to take screenshots of your mix and edit windows just to save them with the project folder. That way, if there's any questions about what it looks like or what's going on, that would all be there. A key thing to do is to actually, it says, first of all, close the session and reopen. We're not going to do that because I'm trying to do this walkthrough. But you can also go ahead and get rid of any of the files that are not in use. So this is a pretty simple process, but this is going to be fantastic because it's going to shrink the size of this session and make it a lot more manageable. So I'm going to come over here to the clips list. And if I use this little clips list or disclosure triangle here, I can select all unused clips. And let's see, that doesn't select any. So what we may need to do is go to the left here first to the tracks and delete these tracks that we don't want. So just be very careful when you're doing this, and it will cue you on each one and saying like, are you really sure you want to delete it? And we can say yes. So go through and just hit delete. It's a little bit tedious. It's going to ask you for each one. Just make sure you don't get rid of the ones that you have currently selected. So I'm just being very careful over here, holding shift to select multiple tracks at a time and just deleting the ones that I've decided I'm not using. So by the way, you would only do this probably like at the end of the project. So like after you've gone ahead and decided that these are the takes that we want, you can go ahead and delete this. By the way, we're doing this in the copy of, so you could always go back to the original that you might keep, you know, on a backup drive somewhere. But this version will sort of be the one that you can use to send to clients or even just use, like I said, if you need to reopen it at a later point. it'll have all the basic things that you need. So I'm not going to go through, well, I'll go through here. I'm almost done. I can select multiple ones. By the way, I'm just holding shift while I'm clicking on multiple ones, and that's letting me do this relatively quickly. But you can see it does kind of take a minute here to archive. And so a lot of people don't do this, and then they have gigantic files, and things get lost and corrupted, and they have a bad time. I'm going to be making sure not to delete these last two, talk back and hear back, because that's how the magic here is happening. So now if I go to select all clips and do unused, there's quite a few there now because of all the tracks I just deleted. There's quite a few here. So now that I have those unused ones selected, I'm going to go here and hit clear. So now you can see the clips are not here in the session. And now if I go to get info about my session, it was previously, if I right click and do get info, it was previously 3 gigs. It's now only 847 megabytes. So this is going to be a lot more manageable to sort of move my project around. So by the way, yeah, we want to just for clarity here, when we go to clear, we want to actually go clear and not hit remove, but we want to hit delete to get rid of them. Great. So after you do that, you can then go ahead and bounce the mix and then turn it in. So just real quick, let's just do a quick bounce so that we can sort of see it. Let's hit cancel for a second. I'm going to go ahead and just bounce the selection, bounce the song here. So Command Option B, I'll go ahead. Lab 4 guitars is fine. Probably year, month, date would be better. Your name and the lab name. Looks like we were working at 96 here, so we'll leave it at 16-bit 44.1. And let's see, we'll do just save it to the bounce file. So we're going to hit choose, and we're just going to put it not in Ana Lopez Reyes's session. Instead, we're going to put it on the desktop and save it under, let's see, year, month, date, lab 4, and we'll save it in that bounce folder. So just as a final step here, we'll do it offline here. It'll take a second. But so that we could kind of see it in there. So now if we open our folder, we should have our session file, which is here's our year, month, date. We should have the bounce file in there, all the audio files. Notice those other audio files that we deleted are no longer in here, which is making the session quite smaller, but that just lets you know when you do this, it is very permanent. That's why we were working from a copy. The only other things you want to drag in here is the little write-up or documentation you're going to do about which microphones you selected. You'll go ahead and put that in here, and then also a picture of your Soundstage diagram. You put this here and well. So that was Lab 4 guitars. As always, let me know if you have any questions.